Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and welcome back, my Habs fans. You guys have been incredible. Listen, I hate to say it. You guys say, oh, you should talk about this team or that team. At the end of the day, guys, the Montreal Canadiens, your guys' fan base is incredible. You guys are, I hate to say it, you guys are my big follower, even more than my Islanders fans. I hate to say it. You Habs fans are incredibly passionate, and I could see it because you guys watch my videos, so I really do appreciate it. I do have my love for my Les Habitants out there. So with that said, we're going to be continuing that today, looking at the 2022 NHL Draft for the Montreal Canadiens. They're going to be hosting this year's draft, and quite fittingly enough, they seem to be bottoming out this season. After going to the Stanley Cup Final in 2021, the Montreal Canadiens currently have the worst record in the NHL. It's been a rough season for Habs fans, and there's been a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, Jeff Petrie most recently requesting a trade out. We're not going to really talk about that much today. But you look at 8 wins on the docket for the Habs. Just really, really rough. We knew the Coyotes were going to be bad, but God, through 44 games, Montreal Canadiens have won 8 games. My Habs fans, really, you guys are crazy, and it's been a rough season. I know, but there is, what do they always say? There's always a rainbow at the end of after a storm, there's always a rainbow. Something like that. I'm not really that key with that, but that's not the point of the video. The pot of gold is waiting at the end of the rainbow for the Montreal Canadiens, potentially. And that could be a guy playing right now in the OHL of the Kingston Frontenacs. Centerman Shane Wright. Shane Wright is projected to be the first overall pick in the 2022 NHL Draft. And obviously, there's the haters. There's the people that don't think he's all that good. And compared to first overall picks, potentially as soon as next year, he falls very well short and could be a 4th or 5th overall pick in the next year's draft. But at the end of the day, this kid is really talented. And I think what you have to remember is not every first overall pick is going to be Patrice Bergeron, is going to be Sidney Crosby or McDavid. Yet, that's always the expectation. I know for my Habs fans, they're expecting a first overall pick to come in, be the best player ever, and this and that. Yet, that's just not realistic. And that's not really the mindset that's going to lead to success for a guy like Wright moving forward. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory when you look at their recent draft history. Not Brendan Gallagher. Alex Galchenyuk, a 3rd overall pick in his draft, 2008 or 2009, right? Things didn't really work out for him. He is, not to say a scrub, but he's been playing with the Coyotes, and he's been bounced around the league. Things haven't worked out for him. They rushed him too early. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, the most recent example of that. You look at the success he's having with a really damn good team in Carolina with the Hurricanes this year. Again, pushed the development, pushed him into the NHL sooner than he probably should have been. And you hope that if they get Shane Wright, hopefully they do get Shane Wright. It would be well deserved with how miserable of a season it's been for the Habs this year. You do wonder if he needs that development year. You have to give him that potential year, even though he's the first overall pick. But the question is, would he be a good fit for the Habs? Absolutely. And you look at the Habs situation, specifically down the middle. It's Nick Suzuki, and that's it. And no discredit to some of these other guys on the Habs blue center core. They're obviously very talented, but let's be honest, for playoff caliber teams, Jake Evans, Laurent Dauphin, and Ryan Poehling, he was a first-round pick. That's got to be frustrating for Habs fans. But really, that's kind of it. And you look at even injuries. I mean, Christian Dvorak is out, and that's a center, but ideally, Christian Dvorak is either on the wing or he would be a really good third-line center. And that's where you push Poehling or Evans to battle it out for the 4th line center role. And that's where you have Dvorak and hopefully a Shane Wright, because I hate to say it, you don't really have anybody else besides Nick Suzuki. And I just think the Habs fall short because that is a critical thing for this team. You need to have a good center core, and that is kind of just been just blown up. And with Kotkaniemi out, it's an even bigger gap. And with Christian Dvorak, his replacement, out, it's like that even more glaring how much they miss him in the lineup. And I hate to say it, losing Philip Deneau last offseason, I don't want to say that's what sent Bergevin out of Montreal, because there were a lot of things that got him out, and it kind of seemed inevitable anyway. But that was a critical thing that I think really hurt this season for the Habs, is losing Deneau. And I think a guy like Shane Wright could kind of fill that void. I think, unfortunately, though, it's going to take some patience from the Habs, which they don't want to hear after a really bad season this year. Probably a really bad season next year. And that's kind of where they're at. And like I said, the good news is they have Nick Suzuki, who is an incredibly great talent. But there's going to be a lot of changes to this team. You just want to make sure they have the talent around Shane Wright in 2 years from now, where that's not going to be an issue. And a lot of guys have had down seasons. I mean, Jeff Petrie has definitely underperformed this season, and we know from maybe a little bit of a disconnect with head coach Dominic Ducharme, maybe that's a little bit more valid with his trade request, so that makes more sense. Shea Weber and Carey Price being out to start the season, I'd assume that didn't really help matters for the Habs to start this year, right? Jonathan Drouin kind of packing his bags. He's going to be dead. He's going to be gone at the deadline, I would think. And Cole Caulfield really having a really bad sophomore slump. Gatorade break. Those are the little things that have really limited the success for the Habs. And you look at the Habs goaltending right now. Samuel Montembeault, who they got on waivers earlier this season, or at the beginning of the season, and Caden Primo. You're expecting a lot from guys that legitimately are Laval Rocket goalies. You're kind of left just putting your hands up saying, what do you do? And it's one of those things where it's rough for the Habs. I get it. But there are just too many things wrong with this team, and there's going to be a lot more changes. I mean, you look at their top 6 forward group and their top 4 defense. You have Arturi Lehkonen. He's going to get traded before the end of the season. Tyler Toffoli could be traded by the end of the season as well. Brendan Gallagher, he's been up and down out of the top 6. He could be traded. Looking at defense, Ben Sherratt, he could be traded. Brett Kulak could be traded. Jeff Petrie could be traded. So 3 of your top 4 defensemen, other than Alex Romanov, could be out. There's just way too much movement. And there's not enough stability right now for the Habs. And that's where this summer is going to be critical for them. And I know I made that video that's doing really well. The Habs hope. A lot of you guys said they're not going to bring in Fleury. They're not going to bring in Letang. They're not going to bring in this guy. You want to think it's different. Again, their owner is still Jeff Molson. He's going to want to sell tickets if they brought in one of those guys, right? Just one of them to be the marquee guy to sell, the guy they can sell season tickets to and suite tickets to next season. Have a banner of him on the side of the Bell Center, a Chris Letang, who won multiple Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh, a Marc-Andre Fleury, who is the 2021 Vezina Trophy winner. Probably going to have a pretty good campaign this year going into the offseason. All those guys, I'm not saying they're going to sign there, but there's a reason to believe that could be on the table. And what I loved was from the Steve Dangle podcast, Steve mentioned with the season Nazem Kadri has been having, his favorite team growing up, could Nazem Kadri end up in Montreal? I'll make a video about Kadri over the next couple weeks, but I thought that was really interesting. That's kind of a stopgap guy. Nazem Kadri could be a top 6 center next year, right? That could be your solution right there. You have Suzuki and Kadri next season, And then Shane Wright comes in year 2 of that, right? So Kadri next season. And then in year 3, or in year 2, you have Shane Wright. Kind of maybe Dvorak plays on the wing alongside Shane Wright. So you kind of build that up a little bit. And then inevitably you want Shane Wright to take over Nazem Kadri on the second line. And that's where you have Suzuki, Shane Wright, and eventually Nazem Kadri as your top 3 centers. And I think that's pretty solid, as well as Christian Dvorak, who could play on the wing in those first 3 lines and fit in pretty much all of those lines quite nicely. But at the end of the day, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Is Shane Wright a good fit for the Montreal Canadiens? I think it's a pretty glaringly obvious need for the Habs that they need a top 6 center. In terms of long term, I think they could address something this summer as a free agent acquisition, like a guy like Nazem Kadri. But let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time. Go Habs.